The Shang Dynasty is one of the first written dynasties in Chinese history, and its establishment has quite complicated reasons and processes. According to historical records, the founding of the Shang Dynasty originated from the leader of the Xiahou tribe, Shang Tang, who overthrew Ji, the last king of the Xia dynasty, in the late 17th century BC and established the rule of the Shang Dynasty. At this time, the Shang Dynasty ruled roughly in today's Henan, Shaanxi, Shaanxi and other areas. The process of establishing Shang Dynasty was not accomplished overnight, but it needed to go through a series of political, military, and cultural struggles and development. First, prior to the Xiahou tribal leader Shang Tang, Ji, the ruler of the Xia dynasty, had become a corrupt, weak, and oppressive monarch, and his rule had been met with discontent and resistance from the people. Shang Tang's father, Shang Jun, had led the tribes to revolt against the Xia dynasty, and Shang Tang inherited his father's cause. He organized a large-scale uprising against the Xia, and launched many tribes to join the anti-Xia team. Secondly, in the process of establishing the Shang dynasty, Shang Tang himself had certain political ability and military strategy. Relying on his military strength and political wisdom, Shang Tang defeated Ji, the last ruler of the Xia dynasty, by uniting with other tribes that opposed Xia, thus completing the establishment of the Shang dynasty. In order to strengthen his rule, Shang Tang formulated a series of political systems and laws, so that the political and social order of the Shang dynasty was well maintained. Finally, cultural exchange and integration also played an important role in the establishment of the Shang dynasty. Under the rule of the Xia dynasty, Shang Tang had learned a lot about the culture and system of the Xia dynasty, and these cultural elements of the Xia dynasty were preserved and developed under the rule of the Shang dynasty. At the same time, Shang Tang also actively absorbed and integrated the cultural achievements of other tribes, promoting cultural exchange and integration. The exchange and integration of these cultures laid a solid foundation for the development of Shang dynasty. Generally speaking, the establishment of the Shang dynasty was a long and complicated process, which needed to be completed through political, military, and cultural struggles and exchanges. Shang Tang's political acumen and military strategy. The Shang dynasty appeared around the 16th century BC, with a history of nearly 4,000 years. The development history of the Shang dynasty can be divided into three stages: the early Shang dynasty and the late Shang dynasty. The early Shang period was from the 16th century BC to the 14th century BC, also known as the late Summer and early Shang. The early stage of the Shang dynasty, in the pre-Shang period, unified state power was not established, but existed in the form of tribal alliance. In the early period of the Shang dynasty, the tribal leaders' internal management was basically in the form of tribal elders meeting, while in the external military and economic fields, the tribal alliance adopted the leadership alliance system. That is, different leaders managed their own tribes, but fought jointly when they were invaded by foreign enemies. The early Shang period was the second phase of the Shang dynasty from about the 14th century BC to the 12th century BC. During this period, the Shang dynasty had gradually formed a relatively complete state regime, which ruled the whole country in the form of centralization. In the early Shang period, the royal family of the Shang dynasty took a series of measures, such as setting up the capital and enfevering vassals, to strengthen the control over the local vassals. At the same time, economic activities such as agriculture, handicraft industry, and commerce were also vigorously developed. The culture of the Shang dynasty in the early Shang dynasty was also relatively prosperous, with many important cultural heritages, such as oracle bone scripts and bronzeware. The late Shang period was about the 12th century BC to the 11th century BC, the end of the Shang dynasty. During this period, the Shang Dynasty gradually declined and the Eastern Zhou Dynasty rose. In the late Shang Dynasty, there were great problems in politics, economy, and culture. The Shang royal family was divided, which led to political chaos. Meanwhile, frequent natural disasters hampered economic development. In addition, the late Shang Dynasty also faced external threats, such as the invasion of the Zhou Dynasty, which made the fall of the Shang Dynasty more inevitable. At that time, the Shang rulers had gradually become corrupt, and the nobles in various regions began to separate themselves. At this time, Duke of Zhou, the ancestor of King Wu, rose to power and began to contend with the Shang rulers. Zhou Gongdan eventually became the prime minister of the Shang dynasty, but the strength of the Shang dynasty was gradually declining. In 1046 BC, after leading a peasant uprising, King Wu, son of Zhou Gongdan, fought a decisive battle with the Shang army in Wei, today Dengfeng city in Henan province. In this battle, King Wu of Zhou used tactics such as changing formations and surprise attacks, which finally succeeded in defeating the Shang army. After this battle, the army of the Shang dynasty was completely defeated. The Zhou army led by King Wu of Zhou was able to enter Shangqiu, now Shangqiu city in Henan province, the capital of the Shang dynasty, and hung up the banner of King Wu destroys Yin. Destroying Yin means destroying Shang at the gate of the Shang dynasty, officially announcing the demise of the Shang dynasty. King Wu then launched a series of campaigns to wipe out the remnants of the Shang dynasty, consolidating his dominance and opening up the history of the Eastern Zhou dynasty. After 3 stages of development, the Shang dynasty was finally destroyed by the Eastern Zhou dynasty. There were many specific reasons for the fall of the Shang dynasty, mainly including the following aspects. Internal factors. Many social problems appeared in the late Shang dynasty, such as bureaucratic corruption, extravagance, and waste, and abuse of enfeoffment system. These problems led to the intensification of social contradictions and the intensification of fighting among the nobility, which eventually led to the weakness and demise of the country. External factors. The Shang dynasty faced threats from surrounding ethnic groups in the later period, such as the Qiang in the northwest, Xianbei in the northeast, and Baiyu in the south. These nationalities frequently invaded the Shang dynasty, resulting in the weakening of the national strength and instability of the Shang dynasty. Natural disasters. There were many natural disasters in the late Shang dynasty, such as flood, drought, and locust plague, which led to social unrest and economic decline. In this situation, the Zhou dynasty arose and launched several wars against the Shang dynasty. Finally, in 1046 BC, King Wen of Zhou led a revolution that overthrew the Shang dynasty and established the Eastern Zhou dynasty.